Well, my story is in the mid 1980s. I joined the National Front, which was a really well known name, but the reality of it was a tiny political party that was dying at the time. And I joined the National Front. I got involved with the BNP. Became very disillusioned with those organisations, mainly because of the use of violence to answer just about everything. And I moved to then start working as a mole, an insider, a walk-in for a magazine called Searchlight, which sort of published intelligence on the far right in this country. And then I left the country in 1993. So I'm showing how old I am. I left the country in 1993, and I came back in 2003 to begin working against the BNP, which was on the rise. And eventually, I ended up doing the job I do now, which is recruiting people inside the far right, people like I was years before, and recruit them to pass information to my organisation now, Hope Not Hate, pass us information so that we can destabilise the far right in this country, destabilise it, upset it, disrupt it. That's basically what it is. It's an exciting job, I guess. On paper, it's an exciting job, but really, it's often having to work with people who are quite damaged by their views, or damaged by their associations, or damaged by their political associations. So that's what I do.
And when you say damaged, is it that they're damaged by their political associations, or is it the fact they are damaged for some other reason which gives the far right a way in? Is it? Tell me a bit about how you got drawn into it and then disillusioned.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think a lot of people carry some kind of sadness or fear with them, and the far right speaks to that. And for a lot of people, the far right is very, very comforting. They belong in relatively small organisations with people with the same fears, same concerns, same prejudices as they do. But when I talk about people who are quite damaged, is that that's never particularly healthy. And we find a lot of people who come to us have been, they feel burned, or they feel upset, or they feel let down, or they feel almost sometimes quite traumatized, because the far right is like a cult. It absolutely dominates the way people think, the way people speak, the way people socialize. And when people want out of it, or when people become disillusioned with it, that's probably the most difficult part, is to, even if they want out, is to try and separate them from those people they shared so much with, so much time with, so much political time, so much time online, because obviously social media now plays an enormous part. So people end up damaged by it. They feel a great sense of isolation. And one of the things that we do with people that we work with is we try and re-socialize them. We try and reintroduce them to society. Now, what I do is I do what I do so that I can get information from them. I'm upfront about that. But sometimes you form long-lasting relationships or friendships with these people, and in passing information, we do it as much as possible in person, so it's face-to-face, and we do it in environments where often we're introducing people to new environments, often environments they were afraid of or thought that wouldn't be accepting or open to them. And we're not talking about children. There are a lot of young people involved in the far right, but ostensibly, I think most of the people who come to us for help and who want to get out, or who want to pass information on friends and comrades, are people in their 30s, 40s, and even 50s who come to us, and they talk about the great sense of isolation that they felt from belonging in groups that had the same fears and prejudices as they did.
Yeah.
And sometimes you're talking about, like I said, people in their 30s, 40s, and 50s who might have never been on a plane, might never have been to a proper restaurant. And I sort of smile when I say it, because it still amuses me. But we are dealing with people who engaged in that sort of endless cycle of hatred, totally withdrawn from sort of mainstream and civilized society. So that's what when I talk about damage, I mean, a damage that they feel, a personal damage or a personal isolation, But in terms of how they function and how they understand the real world, that's a very real damage, because much of what we understand about real world and its difficulties and its troubles and its challenges, we sort of tend to face, as head on, as much as we can.
Yeah.
And what we find with people that have been involved in the far right is, rather than being able to face challenges, and there are, we always live in challenging times, but I think now particularly challenging, is that they lack the skills, social or otherwise, to tackle challenging things. And so that's when we see, the introduction of extreme conspiracy theory, and having to break down some of these really very well held conspiracy theories is also part of the challenge for us. And it just becomes really, really clear that we are dealing with people who have increasingly over time, I think, probably since the introduction of like the Trump idea that you can just believe what you want and say what you want.
Yeah. But when you're doing this, no, so I was going to say, when you're dealing with these people, and in your case as well, this is not without risk. These are not nice organizations or nice people. And when it's one thing walking away, but walking away and then sort of taking action to undermine, disrupt, destroy these organizations, that's not without risk, is it? And you've suffered violence as a result.
Yes, the risk is considerable. The risk to me is obviously considerable, and the risk to people caught passing information to us is also considerable. And that's why we put so much effort into what we do in terms of providing security and providing safety and providing sort of exit routes for people. Of course, it comes with considerable risk, because everything about the far right has a base in violence. They believe the only way they can achieve power is through violence. Is through, I think a judge at the Old Bailey recently described it as, they seek a dystopian society. So everything they do is backed up and grounded in violence. And I'm conscious of that. Obviously, I've been a victim of their violence. My colleagues have been a victim of their violence. You open up my emails today, there'll be people offering me violence free of charge. It's but everyone is conscious of that. And I don't really think about it too much. It's just a risk, and it's one of those things you do. Look, if you upset really hateful, violent people, then you have to expect their reaction to you. It isn't going to be the writing of stiff letters. It's going to be with the threats of violence.
So let's then talk about what this new ITV drama is. It's called The Walk-In, and it's about the work that you did through Hope Not Hate, uncovering what was a far right plot to, it's not just inflict violence, but to murder the Labour MP Rosie Cooper, exactly. And so how did that come about? Did you sort of just pick up talk of it? Did someone come to you?
We had a very, very nice young man called Robbie Mullen, who was in the organisation National Action, and the then Home Secretary Amber Rudd banned them in December 2016 because they were quite clearly interested in terrorism. It was the first far right group in the UK to be banned since Second World War, and I'd always felt that there was no way they would obey the ban, but the state believed and told itself that yes, they had obeyed the ban, because after all, they are white British kids who do tend to do as they're told. So I kept investigating, and then early in 2017, Robbie Mullen contacted me and said, "I'm inside this group, and I've got lots of information to tell you," because he wanted out. And the reason he came to me was because, although again he was in that sort of socio-economic, cultural comfort zone with these people, they'd survived post-ban. In fact, they'd opened a gym and an office. For him, his comfort zone was coming to an end. His period of comfort and enjoying it, because he could tell from his associations and meetings with these people that they were most interested in carrying out a terror attack. And so I said to Robbie that I would look after him, and what I would do is to do a big expose story that the the group deemed as terrorists by the government had continued, and they'd opened an office in a gym, and it was all sort of going along very, very nicely. And I was getting lots of intelligence, getting a real look into the inside of their thinking and their internal communications, which were all hidden and encrypted. And that was going very, very well. And then unfortunately, one day in July 2017, my family holiday was ruined when Robbie contacted me to say, I was at a meeting in a pub last night, and a young man called Jack Renshaw, who was also known to us, is going to kill the MP Rosie Cooper and a policewoman. So the so the holiday was ruined. I've never been forgiven by that. Forgiven for that, by the way. The holiday was ruined, and so a chain of events then began, whereby, of course, the first thing was to ensure that Rosie Cooper and the woman police officer that Renshaw was to target for murder were warned, and they were safe.
Yeah.
And then our responsibility was to keep Robbie Mullins safe.
Yeah.
And part of that was to enter into negotiations with the state or the counter-terror police or the CPS to get him an immunity from prosecution, because obviously he had been part of a terror organization post prescription. And then also, so obviously we had to enter into quite tough negotiations to get him an immunity, and they weren't keen to give him immunity, and to the point where they threatened us with prosecution. Because although we thought, oh look, you know, we're journalists, so we're allowed to sneak into band groups and get information, and they kept saying, no, you've obviously not up to date with the 2000 Terrorism Act, which of course we weren't. So yeah, it was all very. There was a lot of, and a lot of this is covered in the walk. I don't want to.
I don't want
to give it away because it's such a good plot.
Exactly, but we won't give it away. How did you? I mean, you've been played by Stephen Graham in the show. Just finally, how? I mean, you know, he's an amazing actor. Have you seen the series? How does it feel? How does it feel seeing yourself
on me at all? Yeah, I've seen it. It's brilliant. It really is. It really is brilliant. I think ITV are onto a winner here. No, it is really good. I think it will. It's 5 parts. I think it will shock a lot of people. It will make people sit up and take notice. I know that a lot of people say, "Is this story true? Did this really happen?" And it is. Yeah, it's brilliant. And being played by Stephen Graham, of course, he's Britain's finest actor. So I didn't even get told to say that. I already thought that.
Shocked over again.
I did a book which covers some of the trial, but you can get it from Hope Not Hate. It's called The Walk-In, but it's not the Walk-In is not based on that book. That book's just based on the series.